Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you of the press conference of the team of a movie called A Ghost Story, which will be presented today in 1 hour's time, 2 p.m. at the Grand Hall of Thermal. We have four members of the film production company called Sailor Bear. Right next to me, is Tobey Hallbrooks, a producer. On the other side of the table is another producer, James Johnston. Next to him is sitting director of A Ghost Story, David Lowery. He might be familiar to you because he was here in 2013 presenting the movie Iron Them Body Saints. And and the connection with the Iron Them Body Saints is the main actor, who is Mr. Casey Affleck. Welcome. Mr. Affleck has won the Best Actor Award at the Oscars this year for his role in Manchester by the Sea. But he's here today to present the movie A Ghost Story. So welcome again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The press conference will last for about 40 minutes. So I'll ask for your first questions, please. There's Věra Mišková právo.
Dobrý den. Moje otázka je na pana Afflecka a týká se jeho nového filmu. Chtěla bych se zeptat, kdo je pod tím prostěradlem? Jste to vy?
Some of the time, it's me. There was someone else who was also did it sometimes, but mostly it was me.
Hello? ZDF Television? Okay.
Yes, Germany. Hi, for David, the first question. So the story was inspired on a personal story, or your personal story a little bit. Can you elaborate on that? And did you have Casey in mind writing the story?
I can elaborate a little bit on the personal side of things. I had moved to Los Angeles with my wife, and I was very sad to leave the home that we had lived in Texas, and out of that, this movie sort of came. That was sort of the initial seed for this movie, and everything I do is very personal, but I don't really think too much about why it is. But that's like the one thing that I can definitely identify as a personal element of this film. And as for the casting, I didn't think about anyone while I was writing it because I was writing it so quickly. That's not usually the case with me. I usually take forever to write anything, but this script was very fast, and I didn't think about anyone until it was done. But then as soon as it was done, I called Casey and Rooney right away and said, "You guys have to be in this. Sorry, if you have any other plans, forget about them."
So a question for David from Richard Moe at I for Film. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the aspect ratio of the film, which gives it the sense almost of a kind of a home movie. And to Casey, I just wondered if you could talk about your work with Rooney Mara. Obviously, you collaborated previously, and did that make a big difference from a starting point? Thank you.
The aspect ratio of the film is 1:3:1, and we also added a little curved vignette to the edges. And the reason I went with 1:3:3 is because I like it. I really like that aspect ratio. I enjoy watching it, especially modern movies that employ it. And one of the things I like about it is that when you watch a film in that aspect ratio on a widescreen television or at the cinema, usually if it's not projected with proper masking, you end up with pillar boxing on the side, which adds this proscenium, which I find quite enjoyable. I really enjoy watching things through when you can see the frame on the sides, and that somehow it just is very visually appealing to me. so I wanted to employ that. In addition, on a thematic level, this is a movie about a character who's basically stuck in a box for eternity, and it felt like the claustrophobia that's inherent to the concept of the film could be, delved into on an aesthetic level by using that aspect ratio. And then because we added these curved edges, that adds the sense of a home movie or a slide projector or old photographs, which, because I'm an incredibly sentimental person, just really makes it click all together for me in a very emotional way. So all of those things kind of figured into the decision to shoot in that aspect ratio. I think the next question is for you.
Well, Rooney's one of my favorite people to watch in movies, whether I'm in the movie or not. She has a way of being very expressive and also very mysterious at the same time. And I think she's the perfect person for this movie because so often, in our scenes at least, one of the actors' faces wasn't being seen, and you had to have somebody who was doubly interesting in the scene to make up for that, I guess. And she can show a huge range of emotion on her face, and in moments where she's just alone, and she doesn't need a whole ton of dialogue to communicate a lot of things. I love working with her, and it's all very effortless. Many actors, myself included, often have to work very hard to make the scenes work and find their way into a character and to serve the director's vision. And Rooney does it all just as if it was sort of second nature.
There's a microphone at the back.
Hello, Mr. Affleck. My name is Mohammad Zarqami from Radio Free Europe, Iran service. My question is a little bit different. Last year, you won an Oscar Prize for the Best Actor. Congratulations. And in the same year, our great filmmaker, Asghar Farhadi, won his second Oscar award. I would like to know, have you watched his movie, The Salesman? Which won the prize, and also, are you familiar with the Iranian cinema? What do you think about Iranian cinema among the dispute situation?
That is a question that requires
Special preparation.
a little bit more preparation and thought. It's a very good question and one that I would be happy to talk to you about. I haven't seen that movie, but I know that Iran has a very long, wonderful history making movies, and that there have been many great films have come out of there, and which and they've contributed to the evolution of movies, and what they are and what they're like right up until now, and But otherwise, let's speak afterward, and we can have a more constructive conversation, because I suspect that I have more to learn from you than you do from my answer.
There are many other questions right now in the second row.
Hello, Eva Přibřelová. I want to ask Casey Affleck, if you talk about working with Rooney Mara, can you talk about working again with David Lowery? What's about him that keep you returning to work with him? Thank you.
Well, he'll hire me. That keeps me coming back. And I think that he's, there's different ways of answering this question. I just really like his sensibility. I like the things that he likes, whether it's in the costumes that he puts on the actors or the production design. And as an actor, when you show up on a set, all these decisions are made by the director well in advance, and you're walking into a world that they have created. And if you feel like at home and you can live in that world, then it makes your job that much easier. And I really love the world that he creates. And also, I guess I feel like that any good movie is an experiment, and that just like an experiment in a laboratory, that movie's success should be judged not by whether or not the results of the experiment match up to what you thought you were making, but rather sort of by how much you have learned from the experiment. And anytime that I work with David, I feel like I've learned a lot from the experiment, and he's a very experimental kind of director. I think he's both has a vision and is a great collaborator, and so there's lots of room to try things and make mistakes and to fail and learn from those mistakes, and also to succeed and to be surprised by what other people are doing. So it's a process that I like as much as I like the end result.
I have a question for the producers, because the movie really started out really great in Sundance. How big of a relief is that, and what did it mean to you guys, to all of you actually?
That people enjoyed it?
Yeah.
The great relief. We made it for ourselves, you know, and it's my favorite thing that we've ever made so far. It was deeply personal film for all of us on different levels. Like Casey was saying, as part of the experience of making it, was extremely personal and difficult, and it was very, very handmade and homemade. And the notion that people were able to see it was exciting, so we were excited people would get to see it. But the fact that they really enjoyed it was just thrilling.
And Sundance is important.
I mean, Sundance is important, of course. I mean, James and I went through the Sundance Creative Producing Fellowship, so they've been hugely supportive of our career.
Yeah, absolutely. We all knew going into it that it was something we were excited about making, had our own personal connections to. David is a longtime collaborator with us as a team, and we really had kind of no concept of how the general public would accept the film or the critical, aspect of it either. And the response we got at Sundance was beyond amazing.
Thank you. Věra?
Já bych se ráda s dovolením ještě vrátila k místu u moře. K místu u moře bych se chtěla ještě na okamžik vrátit. Zajímalo by mě, ten film pravděpodobně na první čtení působil spíš nenápadně. Čekal jste, že bude mít takový úspěch a vy v něm budete mít takový úspěch? A pak by mě zajímalo, jaký byl váš vztah s vaším mladičkým hereckým partnerem. Děkuju.
I didn't think too much about how successful the movie would be, but I was very aware that it was something that I would like a lot, and it was very well written, and it was incredibly moving on the page, and I was excited to work on it. I also knew that it was a challenging and scary part, and usually that means that there's something worth watching there. But as with something like this movie, there's, for me, the most important thing is who you're sort of working for, and you're working for the director. It's the director's movie, and you have to be willing to put aside any ideas that you have going into it, and open yourself up to all of their ideas. That doesn't mean you don't, share your ideas and have lots of conversations with the director, but the relationship with the director is one where you they are the guide and you need them, and there's so many different things to you, and so that was a movie where I was friends with Kenny Lonergan, and I trusted him, and I knew that he understood the material, and so I had faith in him. And then, as with this movie, David had written out the story, and the way that, even with just a few conversations, he talked about what the movie meant and what it was going to be like. It was very exciting, and though there wasn't, it was also kind of bizarre, strange, and I had total faith in him that it would work out, or it would be something that no one wanted to watch, but it would be interesting at least.
Hi, this is a question for you, Casey, as well. One, you were collecting your award on stage at the opening ceremony. You said that if you're making films that mostly people don't see, then you're doing something right. Do you think that will continue to kind of sum up your approach to picking roles, even though you've obviously just won the Oscar?
Right. Well, if my career to this point is any indication, then I'm sure there'll be a little bit of that in my future. I try really hard not to think about whether or not people are going to see the movie or they're not, and just to do things that are interesting to me. So there will probably, so I what I mean is that the things that I tend to be interested in and where they overlap with the people who want me to be a part of them are not usually dead center mainstream movies. That said, I don't have anything against those movies. Some of those mainstream movies I love to watch, and I think they're really great, talented people in them. I just not usually or ever one of those people.
Cool. Cheers.
Yeah.
Is Will Desire?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, maybe next one.
A quick question for David and Casey. What you could tell us about Old Man with a Gun at this point?
We finished shooting it a couple weeks ago, and it is currently waiting for me to get back from Europe to keep editing it. But it is, it'll be sometime next year. It is a lot of fun. I mean, again, we were trying new things with that. As much as A Ghost Story feels like an experimental film in some ways, to me, Old Man the Gun feels experimental as well. Not because it has a character wearing a bed sheet, but because we were trying to have fun and do something funny and lighthearted and I think all of us wanted, James and Tobey produced it. We all wanted to pay tribute to our lead actor, Robert Redford, because he's been an inspiration to all of us here at this table, and we wanted to make a movie that was in many ways a tribute to his career and the roles he's played and the legend that he is in the world of cinema. So we're working on that right now, and hopefully it'll be out sometime next year.
Thank you.
For Casey, you have a brother who's an actor as well. And one would assume that the brothers have a different, similar approach to acting. But what are the differences in your acting technique?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been on set with him. I don't know. I really don't. I'm not avoiding the question. I couldn't even, I would be hard pressed to describe my own technique, really, let alone somebody else's. So, but he is a very, I like watching him, but I couldn't talk about his technique. Sorry.
Hello, my question is for Casey. How you feel connection with characters you are playing? Like if you feel something same.
How do I feel a connection with the characters?
With the roles you play. I mean, all the people in the movie.
How do I create a character, maybe?
Manchester by the Sea, and how you feel if you play a person which loses everything,
Maybe what's your acting approach, maybe?
How the characters affect you.
Yes.
Yes.
How the characters affect you personally. Do you take them home at night?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, there's a lot has been said about actors who take their characters home at night and who have to be called by their character's name, and who there's a sort of all those famous actors, great actors who have chosen different methods to doing their craft, but and I'm not really like that, but you can't help but spend so much time with the character and not have it sort of just affect you a little bit, I don't. I feel like I have to try to stave off a little bit of that kind of insanity more than I do try to welcome it and try to become that person sort of day and night. When you do a part like Manchester, or it's the same as doing a part like in this in some way, it's just that you're there every day playing the scenes with the people, and so it brings out certain parts of you, and for a minute or all the time that you're there working, those are the parts that you're sort of paying the most attention to, and of who you are, in the same way that when you go home and you're not working and you're mostly just with your kids, you start to think and talk and behave more like a parent. And then when you're on set with David and Tobey and James, you have a sheet over your head, you start to behave and think and talk like a dead person.
Like on the scene when you get a gun from the policeman and you try to shoot yourself, it was like the best scene that I ever saw.
Oh.
Spoiler alert.
Thank you.
Hi, Casey. We're from China, and our program is called World Film Report, airing on CCTV 6 China Movie Channel. And we also attend and interview you on this year's Oscar ceremony. And I've got one question, because you have won plenty of awards in the past. So in the future, do you have any specific plan? Do you have any special standards for selecting the movie you would like to attend and play? And would you consider any of the China opportunity in the future? Thank you.
Can you consider any of the what?
China.
Sure, I would love. I don't usually think about what country will be watching the movies when I pick them, but I would be certainly happy to be in a movie in which people in China went to see them, because there are an awful lot of people there, and sure might be good for the old career. And what was the first part?
In the future, do you have any specific standards for selecting the movie you would like to play?
No, I usually just think about who's directing it and whether or not I feel connected to the script.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's a German television last side.
For Casey, I have a double question, because you just mentioned your kids, and I saw the Jimmy Kimmel show. Is the wet towel still on the Oscar, is my question. And your life changed, of course, in the sense that you're much more in the public eye now. Did you get used to that already since the Oscars?
No, I don't think it's not something that will ever be completely comfortable with. It doesn't feel like a big change has happened in my life, to tell you the truth. There's sort of my life and who I am, and then there's the part of me that goes out to promote movies. And when I do that, I just try to talk about the movies, and sometimes it's comfortable, and sometimes it's not comfortable, because there's always a difference between who you actually are and the person that strangers who think that they know you and what they know about you is. So my life hasn't changed that much. And what was the first part?
The wet towel.
The wet towel is no longer on top of the Oscar. Yes, yes, yes. I've taken it back. They'll never get to touch the thing again. Are there any questions about A Ghost Story?
Who has a question about A Ghost Story? The gentleman right here. Okay. Sure, go for it.
Question for all of you, Csaba from Hungary. Do you believe in ghosts?
That's a good one. No?
I'm very open to seeing a ghost, but have yet to have any proof in my life that they exist. So I kind of am open to believing, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Back there, another question about the ghost.
Spáčilová dnes, já bych se ráda pana Caseyho zeptala, díky přízraku, ale nejen dnes, dobrý den, já bych se ráda pana Caseyho zeptala ohledně přízraku, ale nejen díky přízraku, už víme, jaký typ filmů má rád, nebo jak si je vybírá, že jsou zvláštní, něčím provokativní, neobvyklé. A mě by zajímalo, jaký typ rolí odmítá, pokud to dělá. A pak by mě zajímalo, jaký typ filmu miluje jako divák v soukromí. Děkuji.
I like all kinds of movies that range in any genre, and it would be very hard to characterize what type of type of movie that I like. I guess I really like well-written things, and I like good stories, and I like great dialogue and great performances, and and visual movies. So I like all sorts. And the first part was what?
Which movie you?
I tend to. I've sort of done all kinds of movies, and I'm starting to understand that the movies are sort of picking me in a way that I don't totally understand, and that there's something that people are trying to say by the movies that they choose to do that they are not so aware of, and all the things that they're trying to say with the work that they do is not really what is coming out of them, and that the more you can let the movies that you're doing be a way of learning about yourself instead of making any statement, the more you're in touch with what is really happening. The movies I reject of late, I guess, would be things that I find very violent because it just seems more and more upsetting. And the movies that I am drawn to more and more are movies that are that are sort of poetic in the way that they look and in the dialogue, and that they have a kind of more positive message without being so heavy-handed with it. And I find that David's movies are all very, whether they're a little bit sad or a little bit funny or a little bit suspenseful, they're by and large are about good people who are trying to do good things even if they are making mistakes.
Hi, I'm Kamina from Israel. You mentioned in the opening ceremony that you regret on few films that you saw in the list.
Yes, that was a joke.
Yeah. I was surprised that the American Pie 2 was in the list. And where do you keep your Oscar?
And where do I what?
Where do you keep your Oscar?
Right. Thanks for bringing up American Pie 2. And some of those movies I was only kidding because they're done so long ago, and at a time when you're starting out, you just take whatever you can get. And they're not movies that reflect anything that's important to you or that matter to you. And so when I see them up there, I just think, that's not me. It's not interesting to me. And it doesn't feel like I would like it to be projected in dark rooms anymore. But I was only kidding, and I'm okay with all of the movies that I've done, and mostly. So that was just a little bit of levity.
And where do you keep your Oscar?
It is in a closet in my house.
Okay, so there's the. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Hi guys, I'm Mark from ZDF Germany. Nice to see you, and congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
For all of you, I guess, I imagine making a movie, any movie, is a deeply personal experience, as you mentioned. What did you learn about yourselves on a personal level making this movie?
I learned that it's okay to be personal because I've usually tried to distance myself from the things I've made, and to not distance myself in terms of not make it personal, but to try to not lean too closely into my own personal life or things. But in this case, I was making a film which the dialogue, what little dialogue there is in there, is pulled directly from my life, and I felt that if the project's right, it's okay to do that, and that was a good thing to learn.
Hi.
No.
That was for all.
It was for all.
I suppose that whatever spark was there at the beginning with the idea, to lean into that. Even if things are getting weird with the movie and you don't know where things are going, and just to trust that I had a spark at one point, and to be confident. And that instinct of the initial confidence was right, and to hold on to that and remember that.
Yeah, I'm in my 40s now, and I guess you sort of start considering that to be halfway through your life. And I really connected a lot to the speech that Will Oldham gives, the big monologue about permanence and immortality, if it even is a thing. Which, unfortunately, I believe in science, so I don't believe it's a thing. And so it's watching the idea of eternity and whether or not it exists and where that applies in your personal life. Had a deep meaning for me when I finally sat down and watched the cut at Sundance for the first time with an audience. Obviously I'd watched it throughout the editing process, but I felt like at that moment I really accepted it as a human being. And this is one of the first films that we've made that I really felt like that. I've always felt a slight disconnect from the other movies we've done because we've so part of the process, but this one is the first one that we made that really connected to me.
I think I learned I like to prepare a lot for movies, and I sometimes beforehand and all during the movie I'm always sort of planning and preparing, and this I learned just how liberating and fun it was to not do any of that and to just show up and sort of be as present as you can without any artifice, if possible, when possible, and that also can work.
Hi, it's a question for David. One of the kind of interesting debates in the film industry at the moment is what happened with Cannes, with the kind of the Netflix and that kind of debate about kind of VOD versus cinema. And it'd be interesting to hear what your perspective would be on kind of working with people like Netflix and Amazon, and just more generally, is a film still a film if it's never shown in cinemas?
I am a devotee of the big screen. I like to watch everything on the big screen, and I certainly make my movies to be seen on the big screen. But that being said, I want movies to get made. I want my movies to get made, and I want anyone with something that they feel is worth sharing with an audience I want them to have the chance to make that. And Netflix and Amazon, and I mean Amazon was a big part of Manchester by the Sea. Like that, like you can't take that lightly. And Netflix is certainly staking their claim to the ground about putting movies on Netflix the day they come out. They're maybe setting aside the theatrical experience more than I'd be comfortable with, but at the same time, I'd rather them do that than not make the movies they're making. And so at the end of the day, I fully support them and endorse them. I would be delighted to collaborate with them, and I know that, most people will ultimately see my films on a streaming service of some sort. That's just where most audiences are going to find them. So I just have to set aside my own ego to a certain extent and my own desire to have my work projected on a giant screen like we're going to see later today. That's great for me, but for the movies, A, they get to exist, and B, more people get to find them. So ultimately, I'm okay with it. I would love to see, I would have loved to go see The War Machine on the big screen on opening day rather than on Netflix. That would have been my personal preference, but I'm still glad I got to see it. So that at the end of the day, I think it's a moot point. I think they're doing a service to the industry in terms of producing movies that would otherwise not be able to find financing. And you look at these movies that are $2 to $10 million and no one else is paying for them. And that's a great thing to have an outlet for movies like that and a source of financing. It's a great, form of support for filmmakers who want to tell stories at that scale. And so, yeah, ultimately it's a good thing.
Cheers, thanks.
Thank you.
Ještě jednu otázku, Casey. Vy jste zmínil, že jste s bratrem Už jste zmínil, že jste s bratrem dlouho nebyli spolu na plátně, na place, a mě by zajímalo, jestli máte čas se scházet v soukromí, jaký je váš vztah, jste si hodně blízcí?
Yes, we meet in private, and we're very close. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I see? Okay. Thank you.
Podskalská deník, dobrý den. Já to zkusím krátce, vím, že už se tiskovka chýlí ke konci, jenom jedna taková otázka možná na odlehčení na pana Afflecka k tematice filmu, otázka na pana Afflecka k tematice filmu Přízrak. Tam se dějou různé nevysvětlitelné věci, tak by mě zajímalo, jestli i vám se někdy stává, že vám nečekaně spadne prosklená rodinná fotografie a jestli si vždycky dokážete takové věci vysvětlit racionálně, nebo jestli taky trochu věříte na duchy. Děkuju.
Lots of things have broken in my house, and that's usually because of my children. But there's always bumps in the night and different noises, but I haven't, more often than not, a ghost is the least scary thing that comes to mind. Yeah, was that the question? Things fall off?
That's it. So another ghost story question? Yeah?
Yeah, I have one. Why did you use the sheet? There's many ways to show a ghost, and you're hiding your actor for most of the film. I mean, obviously that was part of your experiment, but did you think of other ways to show a ghost that wouldn't hide him so much?
I mean, there are a lot of wonderful movies that show ghosts in many different fashions, but the original image that came to mind for this film was the ghost in the sheet. That was there from the beginning. And so there was never a point where I was like, okay, let's show who this character is. The challenge in the idea was to create a cohesive character, so even once Casey's face was covered up by this sheet, you're still feeling like he is the protagonist of the movie. You're still feeling like he is that lead character. That was a challenge for us as filmmakers, and we never once thought like, oh, let's backtrack on that. We were 100% committed to it, and I think it was fun to sort of, see what type of performance you can get out of an actor when they are completely deprived of all of the usual, tools that they have at their disposal in most films. And I think that the finished product is evidence that there is great, there's a lot to be found in that.
Okay, so there is a time for 3 more ghost questions. So, you do want to ask something?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh. I'm sort of curious. I'm going to ask a question. Would you say that when you started writing, David, you were already aware of what the movie meant to you?
No, I wasn't.
Not at all. Well, there must have been some
there was like
seed of something.
Well, like I said, like there was like the personal stuff, like my own ideas of like wanting to deal with my attachment to physical objects or places. That was like there at the beginning, but it became more as I was writing it. The existential crisis at the center of the movie became more and more pronounced. So I didn't know that was going to be a part of it right in the outset. I initially thought perhaps it would be more of a vague, abstract gallery installation.
But before you started shooting, you were sort of already aware of, to a certain extent, what the themes of.
Well, by the time we started shooting, I knew, but when I was writing, I didn't know.
So how long does the discovery process go? You stop shooting, and then is there still more discovery while you're editing and posting and everything?
It's not so much discovery as clarification. Like the movie's themes sort of reveal the degree to which the movie is committed to them. I think because they're always there, you sort of are always like fumbling for them. But as you were editing, you were distilling down the essence of the movie. You're kind of like removing all of the detritus that surrounds it and realizing exactly what it was you were after and how much you were after it.
And when you make a movie, are you more trying to make a statement? Do you have some point or some idea that you want to convey? Or are you sort of just telling a story and then letting those ideas play out?
Yeah, it usually comes from the story, and the ideas kind of are like they gain, they cumulatively kind of like build up around the narrative. But there's I've yet to make a movie where I have like a point or a point of view that I feel like I need to communicate. It's more a story I want to tell, and out of that story comes, whether it is a point of view or a tone or a feeling or a theme or some sort of ideological catalog of existential crises, as this movie sort of has, that stuff comes out in the process and rather organically. It's not very well thought out in advance.
And how much would you say a movie has changed by once you have chosen an actor or you've been stuck with an actor, or they say you have to cast so-and-so and so-and-so, how much does that change the movie, or how much you try to bend the actor to fit into some of the idea that you had originally, what you were making?
I usually bend the movie to the actor because I find that more interesting. I like to let the movie be flexible enough to allow it to, capitalize on whatever the actor's strengths may be. And so, as you know, from the times we've worked together, we will, there's very little in the script that I ever say like we have to do this specific way. And I do have a vision for things, but that vision is flexible up to a point because I know that there are multiple ways to skin a horse, to use a terrible metaphor.
Right. I didn't know you ever skinned horses.
So this is the last question.
Oh.
Sorry.
Last question. I have one more. I want to know that the costume design in the movie, it seems so simple, like just a sheet, right? It seems almost as if you're saying like, can you talk about the costume design? Because my experience was that it was actually very hard to achieve what was achieved with the ghost costume, and that although it looks like you're draping a sheet over someone as almost a sort of a joke, like this, look how casual we're being with that it had to be very carefully designed and meticulously executed, And I wonder what the original vision you had for that design and how much how close you ended up to that.
Well, you know, the original idea I had was that we would just put a sheet over your head and cut 2 holes in the eyes, and that would be it. And we did a little test of that, and I think Tobey was wearing it in that video that we shot initially, and that just wouldn't work. It looks silly. It looks like, you know, you kind of really suspend disbelief when you look at a little kid wearing a sheet and assume that, you know, oh, he's a ghost, that's cute. There's a lot of imagination that goes into that. And so what I realized we needed was a 3-dimensional representation of what a drawing of a sheet ghost would look like. It had to have a very simple form, very symmetrical face, very symmetrical eyes, and it had to maintain consistency with that form. And so our costume designer, Anel, constructed this this very elaborate, you know, costume, which you're familiar with, that involved lots of petticoats and a helmet made out of felt that had, you know, screens in there for the eyes that you could kind of see through, but not very, very well, but you could still see through them. And then the sheet was specifically, you know, fabricated to be a certain size and weight and dimensions so that it would hang and drape in a certain fashion. And all of this was done to achieve something that looks incredibly simple, but as is so often the case with filmmaking, simplicity is the hardest thing to achieve. And it took a lot of trial and error to get us there.
We should say that the costume designer is here with you in Lowery, right?
Yeah, she'll be introducing
And I was actually
later.
asking her how hard it was to design the sheet, and she said it was hard for the actor because it was really, really hot under the sheet, so that you guys had to use fans. So, oh, so the costume designer is actually here.
There was also puppetry involved with that costume as well. You know, it wasn't just a matter of putting it on and letting them move around. Sometimes Anel would be below the camera, you know, moving the sheet in certain ways, so it looked the way that David wanted it to. So it was not just designing the costume, but also a little bit of puppetry too.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a few thousand people waiting at the ground hall for you right now. So we should probably thank the delegation of the Ghost Story. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.